You're listening to The Real Fan Review with Hav, Sanj, Al, and B.
What's going on, podcasters and YouTubers? This is Hav here, one of your hosts from The Real Fan Review. Today with me, we got my boy Sanj.
Good evening, everybody. As always, it's a pleasure to be with you.
We got our man in the chair, Al, today.
How's it going, everybody?
Yeah, no beat today. He's got some things going on with work, but we'll carry the load for him, so no worries. And on today's podcast, man, we're going to be going over 3 movies coming out this week. Not in the movie theaters. We'll find out which one the fellas are
Movies
watching.
nonetheless.
Yeah.
We'll take it. We're also going to be talking about some of the things we've seen this week. And then more importantly, today, we're going to go over some stuff that's been going on in the world. And we'll get right into that. But first things first, man, let's get right into these 3 movies that are coming out this week. Sanj, we got Artemis Fowl coming on Disney+. We got The Five Bloods coming on Netflix. And I think we have, what's the other one there? Oh, The King of Staten Island coming on video on demand. So those 3 movies are coming out all this week on Friday. You catching any of those 3?
Artemis Fowl. Been waiting for that one.
DuckTales Part 3?
DuckTales Part 3. It is nothing like DuckTales. It's just a funny name, Artemis Fowl. But yeah, I was actually introduced to that by my little sister.
Right.
That was a series that she a series of books that she was really, really into. So she's excited for the Artemis Fowl movie to come out. So yeah, definitely catching that one.
All right. And Al, man, how about yourself, man? Out of those 3, anything you're catching on those?
Yeah, same thing. Definitely Artemis Fowl, because I had no knowledge of this movie. I didn't even know it was a book or a series of books at all. I had no background on this movie, but until the previews started. And then even now they're doing a big push with the marketing, and they got the previews coming out on the TV and online. And it looks pretty good, So we'll see how that goes. I'll check that out definitely. I want to see The Five Bloods because it sounds like an interesting movie. The actors that they got lined up for it are real good. So I'll check that out. The other one, King of Staten Island, I don't think I'll be checking that one out.
No Pete Davidson for you, man.
Nah, I've never really been a big fan of his. Like his comedy never really hits with me. So
I don't think this is a comedy though. I think this is an actual bona fide drama.
Well, he said it's the 8 Mile for his story. It's like a take of his story of how he grew up. It's of course, with some extra stuff that didn't happen, of course, but it's pretty much his own story of how he grew up and what he's been through, kind of thing, with him losing his father as well. So it may be maybe have some comedy elements because he's in it, but at the same time, not exactly sure. But I am a little interested in seeing that too. For me personally, though, Artemis Fowl is definitely going down. I'm watching that Friday night. And then because I'm so movie stricken, I need to see movies, I'm definitely going to see The Five Bloods on Saturday night. So I got my Friday and Saturday plan for this week coming up. So The Five Bloods. I don't know if I'm going to be able to see The King of Staten Island, but definitely The Five Bloods and Artemis Fowl.
The Five Bloods. O positive. No, I'm just kidding.
O negative. Yeah, man. So that's that for this week.
I want to see The King of Staten Island. I don't want to pay for it though.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So I'm like, I'll just wait till Netflix or something has it, or there's some legal way to get it for free.
Absolutely, man. Because out of those 3, Artemis Fowl seems like the most they put the budget into it. It's a real good, I would say, action movie. So we'll see how it is. It's like Sam said,
wasn't it supposed to kick off this summer's blockbuster season? That's what it was intended to do, right?
Oh wow, I wasn't sure. I knew Black Widow was supposed to do it on May 1st.
Yeah,
that came.
No, but Artemis Fowl was supposed to be like a summer release. It was supposed to be part of that whole big summer push that the movies were going to do. Yeah.
Yeah, nuts, man. But we'll look forward to it, and most likely we'll be able to give you a review on that next week. We'll talk about Artemis Fowl and maybe The Five Bloods as well, and we'll see.
That word foul.
Exactly, man. And then there really wasn't much news as far as like, the entertainment world, and we'll get into more of that a little bit later on. And then we'll just go into our next segment really quick, which is the movies that we've seen this week. As far as the movies that I saw this week, I know I got a chance to see The Photograph, and I was just telling the guys before we started recording, I think the movie just meant more to me because I kind of identified with the relationship a little bit, and I thought of it like more of a, I was like, oh, this is so cute. I can't believe this. And I actually enjoyed it. While I was watching, I was saying to myself, this is fucking boring. But but at the end of the movie, I looked at the wife and I was like, I love you.
No.
And then sure enough, like the next day and the day after,
And
me
then
and
she
her
turns
were
back.
talking
She's like,
about
"Oh,
it.
what's wrong with you?"
Soft. No, she actually enjoyed it too, which was kind of crazy because we were both watching and we were like, okay. And it just felt like nothing really was happening, but dialogues were happening. The movie goes back and forth through time, and it tells the story of this first couple, and then it goes into this newer couple that's kind of related to the old couple. Don't want to kind of ruin it for anyone, but it was interesting. Nothing, I guess, again, nothing dynamic and crazy happens, but it's just a more of overcoming challenges that we give ourselves, and sometimes when finding love, it's hard to open up and go get what you want. Sometimes you close yourself down or don't want to open up. So it was interesting, man. But I did end up seeing The Photograph. I also wasted my damn time watching Gretel and Hansel. Oh boy, yeah,
What
don't do
is that? What is that about? I've kept hearing about it, but I haven't seen a preview, haven't seen anything about it. Just
yeah.
heard of it.
So I'm on this mission to watch every movie that comes out for 2020, and I see why I shouldn't. so so Gretel and Hansel instead of Hansel and Gretel is just the story of like the witch from Hansel and Gretel who makes the house, who makes all the goodies that makes the kids want to stay, and then she tries to eat the kids.
Hmm.
Uh, it's just a horror take or a horror story on that, with Gretel being the main person in this one, where she's trying to convert Gretel. Yeah, I'm gonna spoil this one because I don't want you guys to watch it.
Thank you.
I'm saving you guys.
Thank you.
I probably wasn't going, so you might as well.
Dude, it was so bad. I was
But wasn't
nodding
wasn't
off.
Liam Helmsworth in these movies?
No, no, that's you're thinking
So what
of
am I thinking of?
the Swordsman, I think it is,
The
or
Huntsman.
the
The
Huntsman.
Huntsman.
There it is.
Yes.
This was
Yes.
this was just Gretel and Hansel. Don't do it.
Ooh.
No.
Yeah, man. But those are the two movies I got to see this week. If I could recommend one out of the two, I would say The Photograph. But I know The Photograph won't be for everybody. It's a slow movie, and again, it's more of the romantic side. Nothing too crazy happens in it. Again, it probably appealed more to me because I identified with the characters. So, but how about yourself, Al? You get to catch anything this week?
Not at all. Between work, the kid, and just doing her stuff around the house. There was a project that we took up that the wife and I took on this weekend,
Yeah.
just doing little things around the house. We thought that, all right, this, maybe a few hours, it took the entire weekend.
Same.
Okay. Yeah, we just finished it not that long ago. Came out great. I mean, we're proud of what we got done, but
Yeah.
it was, as we're doing it, we kept saying, "Yeah, wasn't it supposed to be a couple hours?" So
When it
the
comes to
movies
the
we,
house, nothing does, bro.
okay, okay. And then during the week, just like I said, I've been just catching up on Lucifer. Still watching that, trying to get
Yeah.
caught up because season 5 is about to come out. And then
Mhm.
I just heard that they got greenlit for season 6, or at least they're trying. It looks like there's going to be a season 6.
Gotcha.
Yeah, so just trying to catch up on that.
I hear you, man. How about yourself, Science Man? You had a chance to catch any movies this week yourself?
Negative.
Negative.
It
Hey,
was that
rough
it
week
was
for
that
both you
kind of week.
guys.
It was that kind of week too, because remember last weekend, we were busy like doing painting and other maintenance on the house and things like that. And then
Right.
this weekend I worked, and in between, like during the week, I had to um you know there's a lot of stuff that I had to get done as well. So it just, as much as I tried, like when I sat down at night, or whenever, I immediately passed out. Even you put on something and it ends up watching me. So this week was not that kind of week. What I'm really trying to do is like get a lot of stuff done here at the beginning of something, because you know how it is with home ownership. There's always something you can do, right? No matter what you're doing, there's always something you can do. So I said before summer officially starts, like calendar. I know May to I know Memorial Day there is the unofficial start to summer, but I said before summer officially starts, I'll get a bunch of things done. I have a list of things that I want to get done. I said I'm not doing nothing after that. Like that's satisfactory for this year, So
Especially with this type of year.
And I'm happy to report I'm very much ahead of schedule, so that the summertime, as things are easing up and everything, we, us guys, we can just get together, we can go places, we can do things, we can just chill instead of having to do work,
Absolutely, man. So yeah, man. I mean, it's been hard to do movies, honestly. I've snuck away time to do those movies, and I'm telling you this: if it wasn't for like this goal of mine to watch all these movies, I probably wouldn't have been able to do it, because I was literally forcing myself to watch Hansel and Gretel, or Gretel and Hansel. So, but yeah, man. Listen, maybe next week will be a better week, and like I said, maybe next week we'll get a chance to go over either Artemis Fowl or one of these movies that's coming out
I'm
this
definitely
week.
gonna catch Artemis Fowl. That I'm definitely catch.
All right, so then it's a deal. Artemis Fowl next week.
Yeah.
All right. And then one of the reasons why this last topic here, and this might be a shorter podcast, maybe a regular podcast, but what we were doing this week was, realizing things that were going on in this world. And I kind of touched on it a little bit towards the end of the podcast last week, where I was asking people just to be an open ear to people, to kind of understand and listen to other people's side of things. Because a lot of stuff was going on with social injustice or social justice, people fighting for their rights, their lives, a lot of things going on in this world. And instead of trying to like just not talk about it or anything like that, I figured the best way to talk about it, especially with our podcast, because what we do is we relate everything to movies. Even we put ourselves in situations, we figure out things about movies, we talk about all aspects of movies. So that's one way I figured maybe that's one way that we can contribute to this conversation. One of the reasons there wasn't news or events that happened is a lot of people did what they call a blackout. If you were on Instagram or Twitter or anything like that, you saw people putting up pictures of just like a black wallpaper or just nothing, just to kind of symbolate, to say, hey, we're thinking about this movement right now. And there was a lot of events that were canceled. I know PlayStation had an event, and I think something else had another event on that it was canceled as well, because people wanted to show the respect to what's going on right now, as this is not the time for the fun and games or entertainment. It's the time to talk about this, so I figured why not put that towards the movies that I know, that I've seen, that maybe I could put someone on that doesn't know about what's really happening. So with the social justice movement and things that are happening right now, I told the fellas before we started the podcast, we should maybe just give some ideas as to things that are, movies that pertain to these social justice things. And one of the first movies that I want to talk about is Detroit. Detroit is a movie that I saw maybe about, I think it was either a year ago or 2 years ago. It's directed by Catherine Bigelow, who's a great director. She's known for, I think it's The Hurt Locker and Zero Dark 30. But she did this movie called Detroit, which is regarding the incident that happened at the Algiers Motel, I believe in the 67 riots in Detroit. And it's just something that's very powerful. You see what people are going through, and just the entire situation, the feel, I would say the unjust that happens in the court cases towards the end of the movie as well, is some of the reasons why you see people that are protesting right now and what's going on. And if I could recommend a movie for people to watch, to kind of be like, okay, not to get a full understanding of what's happening, but to have just like a little bit of a, okay, I can kind of see what's going on.
Give some context to it. That's yeah.
Yeah, I mean, in Detroit, what ends up happening is there's a house party that's
Oh no,
happening.
no, I was saying like that movie would give it context, for if
Oh,
you're
okay.
not
I
going
thought
to
you
give
were
a full
asking for
picture. Yeah.
context. Oh, yeah, yeah,
No, no,
yeah. I'm
no,
not
no,
gonna
no.
give.
I'm
I
sorry
want
that
people to
I'm
watch it.
jumping in
Yeah,
unclear like that. Yeah.
no, it's all good. But again, I think that Detroit is just a really good movie for you guys to watch if you have no idea what's really happening in this world right now, as far as why people are protesting and what it is that people are asking for. You can go back to 1967 and you can even go back even further and you can kind of see, wow, this is crazy because those things were happening then and look what's happening still now. You know what I mean? So there's certain things that are happening and when we talk about social justice, it's not just like policing. We're talking about the criminal system, the jail system. It's a lot of things that's involved in there. So when we talk about certain movies, you may get one aspect of it, but at least that one aspect you can get some kind of knowledge about what we're talking about. So that's one movie for me that I recommend people to watch is Detroit. Sanj, is there a movie that stands out to you that deals with social justice that meant something to you, or something that could maybe give people like almost opening their third eye to understanding what's really going on out here?
Well, for me, Malcolm X was a real eye opener,
Right.
from back in the day because that's when I was like a teenager, you know, um, and growing up in the 90s and stuff. You think that all right, it's modern times. Civil rights movement at that point was 30 years past. It was a generation ago for me at that point. So it was like something that felt like it was in the past, right? And
Right.
then you start watching something like Malcolm X and you realize, wait, you do the math. This is these people are still alive that fought for this, and and we're in the streets like people are in the streets now,
Yeah.
fighting for this. But another movie I think that really really is kind of gut wrenching, but makes it visceral. It goes back to the criminal justice system as well, not just the policing, not it's also the court system and how evidence is presented and how evidence is suppressed. It was Just Mercy with
Oh,
Michael B.
yeah.
Jordan and Brie Larson and Jamie Foxx. It
Yeah.
tells a story of how a man who just because he didn't even fit the description that they were looking for, and it's just like it's just
Yeah.
that it reinforced that concept of any black man will do to get a conviction. This is like they were under such pressure to get a conviction that they just picked up anybody, and the evidence was just so spotty, and then the fight that they had to go through and the amount of years of his life that he lost sitting on death row, as a matter of fact,
Right.
just sitting on death row. And so that made it real. That and that's a recent movie that's real. And that's a true story. So I mean, it makes it real visceral.
Yeah.
But another one that from back in the day as well that really put things in context was A Time to Kill with Matthew McConaughey, Samuel L. Jackson, and Sandra Bullock. And it was fiction, but it was set in the South. And here it
Right.
is. And it added layers. It added layers to the story,
Hmm.
where you have this little girl, maybe about 8, 9 years old or so, is brutally raped, right? By an 8-year-old little black girl is brutally raped by two white men, right? And they get arrested, right? And the girl's father shows up while they're being taken into the courthouse to get arraigned, and just he fires off his automatic rifle and takes them out. So now
Hmm.
he gets arrested and put on trial for murder, right?
Right.
And it was just so many layers to it because you have Donald Sutherland was in the movie as well, and one line stood out for me from the movie in the movie where he is talking to Matthew McConaughey's character,
Right.
Jake Brigance, right, the lawyer, right, and he's saying to him, "Well, Jake, you can't win this case because our system of justice does not allow for vigilante violence, right?" And then at the same time, he turns around and he says, "Well, but." It also, our system of justice also allows for an understanding that you can be put in a temporary state of rage as well, and not be responsible for your actions. And he's like, you could win this case and win this case, no matter what. So it added that legal aspect to it, among the backdrop of racial tension and everything that goes along with it. So those are the ones that stand out to me.
Gotcha, man. And Al, man, how about for yourself, man? Anything stand out for you? Any movies that mean something to you, or kind of like puts you into a place where you understand everything that's going on, or it deals with what's going on kind of right now in this world?
The one that came to mind, and not necessarily because, like you said, it put everything in context. It's because in my mind, it tried to do what I hope everybody tries to do in a situation like this, was The Hate U Give.
Oh, yes, that was good too. Yes,
where it was a situation where you had the black male shot because he was reaching for something. Meanwhile, it was a comb during a traffic stop. And it was a situation where, again, to defend the police's action, they start bringing into his background what he was involved in, which had nothing to do with the specific incident because the cop knew none of that at the time.
Right.
But then what I also liked about the movie was you start getting all these different angles. The girl ended up being that she was in a mixed relationship. So you show her struggle dealing with her boyfriend, who is white, and her feeling like he wasn't trying to relate and understand. Meanwhile, he was, but he's coming in
his own way,
his angle, which is the way he knows how. Then you had the white friend who was trying to be down and trying to represent, so to speak. But meanwhile, she also felt a certain way, which was conflicting with how she was supposedly being. Then you had the family member who was a cop. So you had that angle where you have the family member who's trying to be supportive, who's trying to help and be there, but at the same time, he's a member of the police department that they're all, So it was a situation where you have a specific incident and they give you all the different angles of that story. Right. Because one thing I don't like is when you hear people, there's a lot of people giving their voice right now to the situation.
Right.
And they're not hearing the other side.
Yes.
And this is on both sides. Sides. Because you hear certain people give out a call, and then without trying to even understand what that call is about or what it's trying to say, they're immediately giving their counter call. Gotcha. Your counter call makes no point. Like your counter call realistically supports their call, but you're just saying it in a way to try to shut them up. Like, try to hear their point. So that's why this movie really brought it to me, because like it shows you the different sides of a story. So now so that hopefully somebody watching this movie can see that there's more than just your side of an incident. It gave you a piece of the other side's story and what they might be going through in that same circumstance, in that same event. So that's what I'm hoping people were to get out of a situation like this, is like, there's more than what you just may say. Even if your intention is well, if you shut yourself down to other avenues and angles to a story, you're not let yourself hear the whole truth. You're just going to hear what you hope to be your version of it, because it fits your
narrative.
Exactly, a narrative of what you want it to be. Because you're just saying, oh, okay, I heard that point, I heard that comment, that supports what I want the story to be.
Right, and so you only focus in on that one, those few things that support your point of it. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. But meanwhile, there's other sides,
Definitely.
So what the kid had a bad background, he was reaching for a brush. You're ignoring the fact that he was shot because he reached for a brush. And why was he not given the so
it also shows
that more of in this society is hearing the other side.
That movie too also like illustrated how quickly things can get out of hand. Like, so routine traffic stop or whatever, right? And you figure, and the portrayal of that cop too, he wasn't necessarily like a big bad, like I'm out here trying to hunt people down or whatever, right? Like when he shot him, he was like right away, he's like, oh shit. Like he was like, And he was like, and then when he realized he had a brush, he was panicking, like, oh my God, the kid, it was just a brush, it was just a brush, and he's just like,
Right.
oh, why? So I mean that was one portrayal as well. Like for example, like another movie that came out recently was Queen and Slim, where very similar situation where it's a traffic stop, not necessarily a routine traffic stop, right? And the cop comes out already acting like an asshole, right? And in that story, that's you could see the point that they were trying to make in that instance, and it was very different than that than that same scene that you were talking about when the kid gets shot in the hate you give. So it just that one just showed one of the good things about that movie. I like to show just how quickly things can spiral out of control, and then we're rioting in the streets. Within a matter of hours and a day or two, and those kids were coming from a party. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like they're thinking about college, going off to school, everything, and then two days later there's rioting in the streets. So that's another aspect of it that
kind of
I
hits
think
home
gets
with what's
lost. Yeah,
happening now.
kind of hits home with what's happening right now.
Yeah, very much.
Yeah, man. And another movie for me, when I was thinking about this subject, was Crash. And it's funny because I forgot about Crash. I didn't think of Crash being as a movie that deals with like race relations, but then I remember there are scenes in the movie that you do see what someone thinks or the perception of someone. Because I even think it was Sandra Bullock who had the perception of the Latino guy who protected his daughter from the with the invisible cape. Come on, I can't do it. But there was a traffic stop in that movie also that got a little too far, and then that same person had to then go see that cop in a different situation, and it was a level of mistrust, and it was just a lot of stuff in that movie Crash. I think another one that a lot of people watch
was also with Crash, that it was part of the story also with Terrence Howard and
his wife. Remember that they got stopped,
and it was that same cop.
Mhm.
And he harassed them and basically molested the wife.
Exactly.
And during the stop, and then later in the movie, he ends up saving her life by pulling
she
her
didn't
out.
Want it. Yeah, and it was
right,
the most
but he does end up
craziest-
saving her life by pulling her from a burning car. And then you're all ready to hate that cop for what he did, and then he goes home, and then you see that he's taking care of his dad.
Who's
right?
not doing too well.
Who's not doing too well, and they can't get help for him. And then the people, when he's trying to get help, people on the other end of the phone are not really being too helpful either, and kind of being rude to him. And when he's just trying to get help for his dad, again, agree, disagree, or whatever it is, there's layers to it.
Layers, yeah. It's not always overt. What happens out here, but there are situations where it is, and that's why you gotta. These movies, they help you understand certain aspects and certain people's thoughts and opinions. You know what I mean? But you also still got to take into account that sometimes there are no real answers to what happens out there, or what happens, period, in all these things.
See, when I watch these movies, especially when it deals with heavy topics, whether it's a dramatization or whether it's based on a
true life event or something,
true life events or historical events, I try to take it from all sides and say, what would I do? How would I feel if I was this person in this situation? And I think that's something that A Time to Kill did really well also, and they were very overt about it, because at the end of the movie, the big line of the movie was at the end when Jake Brigance is giving the closing arguments, his version of the closing arguments, right? It's very interesting that in the movie they chose to have his character do that speech, because in the book it was one of the jurors in the jury room that gave that speech that turned all the other juries. He says, imagine all this stuff, and he goes through everything that was done to the little girl, right? So I'm gonna spare y'all. We're not gonna say all that on the podcast here. Imagine all of that. And he had them close their eyes before he gave his speech. He's like, please close your eyes. And all of this, and he said everything that happened to her, and he said, now imagine she's white. what would you do as a father? Right?
Yeah.
So so now it's like basically, an all-white jury,
Mhm.
trying to, and it's a black man on trial. And then of course, for drama's sake, he gets found innocent. But they showed you, take one of the lessons of that movie I thought was, take the context of everything and imagine yourself in the situation.
Put yourself in the role.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How would you feel? What would you do? Before you rush to a judgment of
Mhm.
anybody involved in the situation, right?
Yeah.
How would you feel? Put yourself in both sides, or sometimes there's 3 sides and 4 sides, right?
Right.
And how would you feel?
Absolutely, man.
Mhm.
And you know what I wanted to bring up to you guys and see if you kind of agree with me, like with the protesting and the rioting and the things that are going on. I think they're all just different forms of showing frustration, personally. And I
Yeah.
think one of the biggest examples that I saw and I could kind of relate it to in a movie was Black Panther. We have a lot of younger people who watch the podcast, who listen to the podcast, and sometimes seeing those movies that we talk about is something that you should give a shot, but sometimes I know you may not, but you really should just give a look into those movies and, rent them, look at them, watch them with family members and, get
Have
questions, have a
have
discussion, exactly. But
Yeah.
I'm gonna give you one that y'all are gonna like, man. Black Panther.
Love it.
Killmonger.
Love it.
Killmonger's angle in that movie, as much as he's the quote unquote bad guy, let me tell you something. In the theater, I was on Killmonger's side. you know, because I kind of understood where he was coming from. It's like you guys have access to all this stuff, and we're out here suffering. You know what I mean? And where T'Challa had the angle of were they literally playing like Martin Luther King and Malcolm X in that movie also?
It's always a variation of the
Right?
theme.
So it's kind of like a little bit of that.
There's always a variation of that theme going on.
Yeah.
Whether to be peaceful or to go get it. You know what I mean? And it's a tough thing. And sometimes in frustration, you may choose one or both. You know what I mean? So it's insane. But the angle where Killmonger was coming from is the built up frustration of what's been going on for these years also. So, in looking at his story and concentrating on Killmonger's story, I believe you can get some answer as to what the hell is going on out here. You know what I mean? So Black Panther is one for like the 18 to 25, you know what I mean? But honestly, you 21-year-olds should watch Selma, Detroit,
Well, I mean,
Time to Kill.
remember one of the things we talked about when Black Panther came out, and um, with Chadwick Boseman there. So if you want to speak directly to younger folks, so let's take the same actor, Chadwick Boseman, or T'Challa, right?
Mhm.
He was in a movie about Thurgood Marshall around the same
Right.
exact time, and Thurgood Marshall was a for real superhero. Like he was going out as a lawyer and fighting civil rights cases and fighting for people, for black men and black women and black people, and people of color in general, fighting cases and winning in some of the toughest environments to try to win in, putting his own life at risk. So I mean, this guy was a for real superhero. So
Yeah.
if you can think of Chadwick Boseman as T'Challa, then go see him in that movie, and that can give you some good context as well. But going to what you're saying about Killmonger's angle on it, I agree with you completely. But I'll add this to it. I think they're not trying to what Black Panther I think was trying to do, and what I got out of it is that you don't have to choose to be. There's no right or wrong. You don't have to choose to be a Martin Luther King. You don't have to choose to be a Malcolm X. I think the message is both were necessary, right? Both methods, both styles, both approaches were necessary. And we couldn't have gotten the progress that they both achieved without the two of them doing what they did.
Right.
There is a time to hold back. There is a time for a measured approach. There is a time for that. And sometimes when no one's listening, you have to be more more in your face with
Right.
it.
How do
It
you
has
get
to
the attention?
how you have to get
Yeah.
the attention. So I think with Killmonger and T'Challa, it's not necessarily one or the other, because I feel like growing up, even when we were growing up and learning things in school, there was always kind of this thing like you had to choose one or the other to kind of support, right?
Hmm.
That you agree that all right, they were both great historical figures, but you kind of had to like fall into a camp. You know,
Right.
are
Yeah.
you a Malcolm X? Are you a Martin Luther King? Are you, you know what I'm saying, are you an activist, or are you a, you know, a pacifist? You know, whatever, however you want to do it. Like, and I think what I've learned along the way is that there's a time for both.
Right.
You
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
now if we have, and me and my wife were talking about this the other day, when you know, you know, when people that when you've been screaming about something at the top of your lungs for your lifetime or decades or centuries or even, right, and then now you got people coming in and say, hey, I'm so sorry, I didn't realize this before. And she was saying, but you know, I have that urge to just say, oh well, now you realize it. We've been talking about it, and you know, we've been seeing it, and you know, and now you realize. I said, but sweetheart, you got to understand, yes, now they realize. The answer is yes, now they realize it. So when that person, so okay, you've gotten in their face and you've gotten their attention. So now when they're coming to you and want to sit down and have the conversation and admit that they were wrong, right? You don't necessarily have to absolve them of anything and say, hey, you know what? It's so great that you're coming to sit down. You don't have to do that part of it. You just say, hey, thanks for coming to sit down. Now let's talk. And then let's ratchet back
Yeah.
the tone of our discussion, and let's have a real honest discussion now, because the person is admitting they're wrong. They were
Yeah.
wrong all this time, right? Or the group or whatever, right?
Hmm.
What more can you ask? You can't make them pay. You know, you can't keep punishing them for that, for the years that they didn't see it, because
Right.
you're gonna alienate them at precisely the time when they're the most open
You can
to,
reach them.
yeah, that they're
Yeah.
most open to hearing that, like Al was talking about, hearing that other point of view to
Hmm.
learn something, you know?
Yeah,
Yeah.
man.
Yeah.
Yeah, man. Al, man. Any other movies hit you or come to mind when you think about this
Not
subject
this.
matter happening?
Yeah, not this coming to mind. Only because I wasn't really able to sit back in terms of, and it's sad because usually I do. Like you said, we always relate
Yeah.
to a movie in terms of certain events, and especially nowadays, most movies have touched on a number of the topics. But it was actually a quote that caught me. Like I was going through Instagram, and you know how everybody throws those quotes on.
Yeah.
It was a quote. Now I'm not sure as to the context that the quote was originally given in, but I felt like it applied to what's going on because throughout the years, people have tried to peacefully bring this matter to everybody's attention and say, look, this is what's happening. Look what's happened. I've got 4 examples that I can show you within the last week. We need to do something about this. And nobody listened. Then there were peaceful attempts to bring attention to it. And instead of just allowing the demonstrations, or at that time, the peaceful protests to go on, they criticized the manner in which they were peacefully protesting, that they were being disrespectful to an object, when the object represents what they were protesting against, not the object. But because people didn't have an argument, they just focused on the object that they were protesting against. So now they were criticizing them for peacefully protesting. And the quote that I attached to, just because it makes sense and I feel it's timely. It was by John F. Kennedy, and his quote was, "Those who make peaceful revolution impossible will make violent revolution inevitable."
Oof.
So and people say,
Oof.
"Oh, why are they why?" Now, not that I agree with looting or violence or
Right.
anything,
Right.
but after a while, when someone says, hear me, let me talk to you. I have a problem. We have a problem. This country has a problem." And they try to say it to you or show it to you. And you just say, nope, I don't want to hear it. Or I don't like the way you're telling it to me. I don't like the way you're trying to bring it to my attention. So I'm not going to even listen.
Right.
And the subject matter is them dying or people they love dying. Eventually they're going to scream. They're going to yell. They're going to grab you. They're going to make you listen to them eventually. And to me, that's what's going on right now. By not listening to them when they were just trying to point it out to you and bring it to your attention, you gave them no other option to make that happening, especially when the alternative is them continuing to die, and you guys know my situation. I have every reason to be on the other side. But to me, when you're talking about lives, you just got to look at life. And you're talking about a situation where you're immediately giving people a defense just because of their profession, and you're not listening and looking at what's right in front of you. And what's funny is another quote that I heard was from Will Smith, was racism hasn't grown, it hasn't increased, it's just being filmed. And that's what's happening. Everybody's acting like, oh, there's an increase. No, it's not an increase.
An increase, no.
The people that are demonstrating this didn't just become it yesterday. It's just that now with our technology, we're able to show you, look, this is what we've been talking about all along. This is the problems that we've been telling you are here. And that's why, thankfully, now more people are listening. More people are saying, all right, now I see what you're talking about. Yeah. It's just sad that it's been taking repeated person dying after person dying before you to say, maybe there is something we need to look at.
Right, maybe.
Yeah. And that's what I'm saying. But, and it's a shame that it's taken this much for them to say, all right, let's talk. For the other side to come to the table and say, you know what, let's talk. Right. As opposed to in the past where they just said, nope, the person did nothing wrong. Really? There's 9 minutes. I mean, I understand you're going to try to say he was resisting, but for 9 minutes, the guy was squirming, trying to breathe. How do you say that's resisting? Right. There's no defense.
And if he was resisting, like, why weren't the rest of y'all trying to hold him down as opposed to standing? Yeah. If he was resisting and the rest of y'all standing around watching, then you're not helping your fellow officer.
Yeah. But to my point, like, there's not all officers are bad.
No.
Nobody's saying that.
No.
But you have to do something about the ones that are. Yeah. Because in my case, y'all know, I went 20 years hoping I didn't get a call every time my relative, my parent went to work.
Right.
I hate that the bad ones are making him look bad.
Absolutely.
I'm hating that there's officers going out to do their job rightfully.
Yeah.
And bad ones are putting a target on their back.
Mm-hmm.
And then now, when a good cop makes an honest mistake, makes reacts to a situation wrongly because he literally had a second to make that decision.
Right.
But overall is a good cop.
Goes back to how quickly things can go out of control.
Yeah.
Because of,
you have one side who's not going to believe him or her because they keep seeing these bad ones get away with it.
Absolutely.
So that's why I say you need both sides to come to the table and honestly say, how are we going to fix this? Because it's going to take both sides being at that table to fix it.
Absolutely, man.
And, hopefully it can get fixed because it's for all our sakes.
Absolutely. Sanj, man, any last takes on this, man? Any thoughts?
Well, I want to clarify one thing. So when I was talking about A Time to Kill, the quote from Lucian Donald Sutherland's character was, lose the case and justice will be served. Win the case and justice will be served. It was such a unique way to look at the case and how the justice system actually works, right? But as far as thoughts on this, even with everything going on, after sitting down and processing for a while, I do have hope. I do feel hopeful because right now I see, let's say, to go rewind 4 years to Colin Kaepernick taking a knee, right? No corporations were, NFL, large corporations, everywhere was basically doubling down on, no, we don't want to hear that. That's disrespectful. That's not the time for it, right? Fast forward to present time, everywhere, every day, more and more corporations, more and more organizations are putting out statements that in no uncertain terms are saying, something needs to be done, and we stand with, Black Lives Matter. We stand with people of color. We stand um, with on the side of change. And
Right.
it's not even a question right now of, well, let's see what's going on, or let's see maybe, right? It's not a question right now. It's, hey, there is a problem. There has finally been widespread admission that there is a problem.
Yeah.
How do we fix it? That's a little bit more, than that's above my pay grade. I'll say, I'll say that.
Right.
But just it gives me hope that the public consciousness right now is, you can see the majority is shifting and saying there is a problem. There isn't a question about that anymore. There is a problem, and on top of it, without making it too overtly political, it's turning a light on this administration as well. And the apologists for the administration, where they're saying, I've read stories where even Republicans now that have been towing the line, not necessarily with their rhetoric, just saying, hey, he's our president, we're going to follow our president and whatever.
Right.
You're starting to see that start to crack too, and
like,
say, hey,
man, we're trying, man.
Right. No, and they're saying, well, you know what? I
Yeah.
believe in this, and he doesn't represent that.
Right.
I believe in decency and everything, and I may have a disagreement with you about how we go about it, but he's not representing that right now, and I'm going to break with him at this point. So it gives me hope. Even among all this turmoil, even among all this unrest, I'm glad to be able to see that positive beacon there, and that's what I want to add to it.
Yeah, man. And listen, for myself, man, the last thing I'll add to this is that, last week, again, at the end of the podcast, I asked people to be an ear for people. Listen to the people and what they're going through, and listen to your friends, your family, your neighbors, because it's happening. You know what I mean? And I never realized how impactful all this stuff that's happening until, like, a lot of deep conversations at work. I'm having conversations about race relations and the justice system, the criminal system, the policing. And not only am I having conversations at work, but even within family. I haven't had so many conversations with my own mother about things like this. I'm having conversations with my wife daily on how we feel about this. I'm having conversations with friends I haven't talked to in a couple of years. I actually got I have a family chat. And there was a family member that felt disrespected and never said anything, and finally said something. And no one knew, or maybe some people knew, I didn't know. And when I saw that person reach out for acknowledgement, just acknowledgement, to say, that he's going through this or this. Dude, I don't even talk to this person. I made sure I said something. I made sure to acknowledge him, acknowledge his experience, to let him know that I support him, I have his back, and to let him know that if he needs someone in my family to be talked to, I got him. You know what I mean? And then right after him, later on in the afternoon, I also got tagged in a post by a friend of mine who is an officer as well. He's a black man. He's an officer. He's an uncle to my kid, and he's one of my favorites, one of my son's favorites, uncles, And he tagged me in a post basically saying, like, people who uplift him and everything like that, and he wanted to be supported. And sure enough, man, I made sure I gave him that respect as well. So it's like, continue being that ear, and if you see someone that needs that acknowledgement, that they're going through this or they're feeling something about this, be that ear, listen, respond back. And you know what? It's not about having the wrong response. Have a response and be willing to learn if your response isn't with what's really going on. You know what I mean? If your response is just, old school way of thinking, or not really seeing what's happening and being in denial, you need to be more of an ear to more people then.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
You need to be engaged. Even if you don't have a response, just be engaged.
Absolutely. This is the time for it. You know what I mean? And I do feel like Sanj a little bit hopeful, and I don't know if that is a little stupidity on my part. I am being hopeful though. I do think that there is changes that can be done and made. You got all these white collar crimes that people get off with like a year or less in probation, and then you got these small little crimes that happen, and our people, Sanj, Al, myself, and Brandon, we're all minorities. We know people who go to jail for a long time for little things. There's definitely discrepancies on how things are, judged on people. So, just be an open ear, listen, ask questions, talk, engage, and be a part of this change. You know what I mean? Like, just be a part of the change. And again, like Al was saying, not everyone's bad here and everyone here is good. Right. And there's a mixture of everything, just like in anything else in life. There's a lot of gray. People want you to believe it's white and black or black and white, everything. No, there's gray in the middle, but there's also what's right is right and what's wrong is wrong.
There's more gray than anything, and every shade on the rainbow as well. It's not just gray. It's every shade on the rainbow as well. And just find. I don't want to necessarily make it a kumbaya thing, but it's easy to get caught up in the doom and gloom, in the negativity, because of the negative news cycle that we get beaten down with or whatever. But I like to find those one or two positive things and just kind of just keep them in my back pocket and just remind me that there is some good here. There is something good coming out here. And other things I found is that you guys know me a long time, so I tend to be more of the mouth. Right. And then, my wife, she is not as vocal or whatever, but with, like you said, I'm having conversations with her on almost daily basis, just like you guys are with your spouses as well. And just things that are coming up at work and she'll tell me about, and she's really finding her voice in all of this and speaking up for herself on behalf of herself, if nothing else. And for me, it's incredible. It's incredible to watch her blossom and find her voice and all of it, and become in her own way, do what she can to affect that change, as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, man, absolutely, man. And listen, man, we're gonna end the podcast right there on this. And again, this has been just a more serious podcast than normal, but at the time and what's going on, it deserves it.
Yeah, we couldn't ignore what's going on out there.
Absolutely not, man. So, it's with the times. And listen, if you guys have any comments, shoot, if you have questions about this stuff, feel free to email us at therealfanreview@gmail.com. Leave a comment on the YouTube or on our website, therealfanreview.com. We're going to come at you every week with different stuff regarding movies. Again, we relate everything to movies, including real life situations. All right. So signing off from New York, we got myself, Hav. We got my man, Al.
Oh, good night, everybody.
We got my boy, Sanj.
Good night, everybody, and stay safe.
And listen, man, we love you. Man, we got this, man. We're going to make this change. We're going to make everything right.
We're on the cusp of brighter days.
Yeah.
Yes.
Know ya.
Absolutely, man. So signing off from New York, Real Fan Review. We'll catch you next week. Until next time.